Well, thank you for joining today. It's a really it's an honor when you get to. I hate using the term legends because I'm a former state secretary DOT. No, they would call me a legend, but it makes you sound like really old when somebody says you're a legend. So I'll just say a couple of giants in transportation that are out here, and we're going to be joined today, or are joined today, by Secretary LaHood, who I had the great privilege of working for when I was at USDOT, and he was Secretary of Transportation. And then Secretary Anthony Foxx, who I had left to go to Delaware and Colorado when he came in, but had a great pleasure of working with him. And we're going to be talking about V2X today, since this is V2X week for ITS America. And so just starting with you, Secretary LaHood, one, great to see you, and looks like Peoria is treating you well. Just wanted to, check in with you. I remember vividly you talking about the dangers of distracted driving, and safety was so important. And at that time we were talking about 30,000 approximately deaths a year on American roadways. We're up to 38,000 the last couple of years. From a V2X perspective, how important is it to connect these vehicles so that we can drive down these crashes?
Well, Shailen, thank you, and it's great to be with Secretary Foxx. I'm very proud of the work that both he and I did in representing President Obama and his vision for transportation and infrastructure. And I think both of us, if I may say so, left pretty good legacies for the country. And I really feel like one of my legacies is distracted driving. Not one person was even talking about distracted driving when we walked in the door in 2009. We had two big conferences in Washington around that issue, invited families who had lost loved ones as a result of distracted driving accidents, and really put distracted driving probably in the same position that Mothers Against Drunk Driving were when they started, and nobody was paying attention. And at the time, only 18 states had passed laws. And now I think almost all 50 states have passed laws against distracted driving. I think we saved a lot of lives and really raised the awareness. We had great cooperation from the insurance companies, Allstate, State Farm. Now you see commercials running, talking about the bad things that can happen to people when there's distracted driving involved. And the bottom line is you just simply can't drive safely if you're on your phone or if you're texting and driving. It's just impossible to do. And I think the word has gotten out, and all 50 states now, even states that were really resistant back in the day, have passed pretty good laws against distracted driving. So I do consider that one of our legacies. But I think V2V was also another one where the vehicle-to-vehicle connectivity and vehicles talking to one another all around the issue of safety, when a vehicle was getting too close on the side or too close in the front or too close in the back, and so forth. And the work we did with the University of Michigan, the money we gave to them, and the studies that they did really proved that V2V was something that, again, would save lives and prevent accidents. And the automobile industry now today, when they manufacture a car, it's almost become standard equipment that cars are talking to one another and talking to the people that are driving the cars. And again, we saved a lot of lives. What we tried to do in the beginning, all the way through the 4.5 years, is preach the idea that to every employee at DOT, that every day in America, people get up, they get in a car, on a bus, on a train, on a plane, on a motor coach, and they don't think about safety. And that was our job at DOT, to think about safety in every mode of transportation. And V2V helped us do that. And today, all over America, with what you're doing, Shailen, what Anthony did as a follow-on to V2V, to take it to the next level, which I know he's going to talk about, is just it's a blessing and a gift to people all over America and to our country in terms of saving lives.
Well, so your passion for safety, it still rings true. And I'm glad you mentioned Mothers Against Drunk Driving, as they're a partner with us in this coalition to help preserve the safety spectrum. And it was a lot about V2V, when you were secretary, and then given the pace of technological change as Secretary Foxx was coming in, sir, you cobbled together a lot of the money for the Smart City Challenge from some research money. You launched the connected vehicle pilots in New York City and Tampa and Wyoming, which are still underway today. What was so important to you at that time about, connected vehicles, and what excites you about them today?
Well, first of all, it's always great to join you, Shailen, and Secretary LaHood, who is not only, as you can see, a very passionate former leader of the department, but also just I consider him just a great friend and mentor, frankly. But let me just say, at the point at which I came in 2013, a lot had been done on the connected vehicle front. We were still, working towards getting the rule pushed out, and eventually we're able to do that. But I think the biggest thing is that there is so much technology out there, some of which was on our radar, some of which wasn't. And what we're trying to do is to try to harness the technology available out in the world and to channel it towards the aims that we have as an overall society. And so the Smart City Challenge, where we took $40 million of research dollars in the department, as you said, and we matched it with 10 million from Vulcan, and basically it did a jump ball and said, okay, cities across the country, how can you harness technology to reduce the impacts of climate change? How can you harness technology to improve mobility, to improve freight, to enhance equity in your communities? And there were 12 categories of criteria we used, and we weren't prescriptive about how communities use that. And I thought that was very important because it really allowed communities to define how they want to approach solving those problems. And of course, Columbus, Ohio, which won the challenge, gave us a very, very clear idea of how they would meet the challenges of the future. But what was also exciting to us was the fact that we had 71 other communities out across the country that had well-defined plans, and many of those plans are being implemented today. So it was really a much bigger win than the city that won it.
Well, sir, I since you mentioned Columbus, I feel remiss in mentioning that I did come in and present as part of the Denver application, and I want you to know that I've cried all my tears, and I'm good now. I'm in a good place that we didn't win, but I've actually been to Columbus and seen a lot of the great work, transformative work. And you talk about technology, and we've talked about this, but outside of even connected vehicles, they're using big data and all these technologies now in ways that we didn't even consider. And Secretary LaHood, one of the things that you worked on and tasked all of us with doing was this partnership for sustainable livable communities between DOT, HUD, and EPA. And we talked a lot about what livability meant. And today, what we see is, now back then it was just people on bikes and walking and taking transit, and now there's scooters and things that Secretary Foxx works a lot on in his day job now. But the unifying theme there is, again, safety and connected vehicles. So from a perspective of trying to create livable communities in this country, how important is it to connect all these vehicles, pedestrians, cyclists? So when we talk about V2V, it's also V to P in pedestrian, V to B in bicyclists, V to scooters, because that's really going to drive this livability argument.
Well, Shailen, I would say that the reason we were successful is because Lisa Jackson was at EPA. Sean Donovan was at HUD. The three of us traveled around the country. We went to places like Dubuque, Iowa, where they transformed their downtown area into a livable and sustainable community. Where we traveled to other places too, really encouraging mayors and governors to really adopt this kind of philosophy for their people, so that people had a wide variety and a wide choice of transportation. I was so struck yesterday. I was in Chicago. My grandson is a freshman at DePaul University, and Kathy and I went there to visit him. And we went out for some pizza at lunchtime, and the hundreds of people that are on bikes and on scooters, unbelievable. And almost all of them wearing helmets, which I was absolutely amazed. I was very proud to help Rahm Emanuel when he was mayor to really launch the they call it the Divvy program, which is the bike share program in Chicago. I was also thrilled to help Anthony launch his great transit program when he was mayor of Charlotte. Anthony was a real visionary back when that program was launched, and went to Denver when John Hickenlooper was mayor, and we launched bike share. We also launched the fast lanes, the 6 trains now that connect the entire Denver area that I know, Shailen, you had a lot to do with that. These are all programs where you had visionary mayors, visionary governors that were willing to invest because they knew that the people in their communities wanted to get out of their cars, wanted to live in communities where there are lots of options. And so all over America today, people have options. And in Chicago, as I said, hundreds of people riding bikes and scooters. And DePaul University's in Lincoln Park, and obviously the train, which the CTA, which is now run by Dorval, went back there after doing some good work for us. And so I'm not only proud of what we were able to do, but the partnerships that we made with people like then Mayor Anthony Foxx or Mayor Rahm Emanuel or Mayor John Hickenlooper. We could have never done these things without innovators and planners who had an open mind for how do we create a kind of a community with walking and biking paths, with scooters, with bike share, with good transit and trains and buses. And all of these things now have contributed to such vibrant communities. One that I'm very proud of is the investment we made with Mayor Emanuel in the Riverwalk. In Chicago now, taking that old rundown walkway along the Chicago River and turning it into a magnificent walkway for people, where now hundreds of people are using it, and they have an architectural tour, an architectural boat tour of Chicago as a result of the Chicago Riverwalk. So again, couldn't have done these things without people like Anthony Foxx, Rahm Emanuel, John Hickenlooper, Mayor Garcetti, the former mayor of LA, and so many others. Governor Brown was terrific on high-speed rail and really getting that project going, and the list goes on and on.
Yeah, well, I think that it's such a long list of incredible investments that were made, and again, that unifying theme of the thing that I hear most from folks who want to cycle now is they're very comfortable with this idea of not going in their car and getting on a cycle or a bicycle or a scooter. What they're deeply concerned about are, as you talked about, distracted drivers who aren't paying attention to their own car and how they can interact with them. One of the silver linings on this COVID piece is I've gone from traveling a lot to being home, and I got to teach my daughters how to bike this summer. And I'll tell you, when we go out in DC and we're biking, my number one fear is there a car coming along that they're not paying attention, to my daughter. And, in terms of leading American cities, 2 years ago, we were in Copenhagen, 60% of trips in Copenhagen done on bicycle. So, you can really move the needle. Secretary Foxx, you mentioned your former role as mayor in Charlotte, and you and I had a lot of discussions about sort of your experiences before you came to be DOT secretary, and how that really informed the way you heard people who came in from cities and states and others, because you really had a tremendous understanding there. I guess as we think about safety and connected vehicles and digital infrastructures in the 21st century, you used the word equity earlier. One of the things we know about fatalities is that pedestrians and bicycle fatalities tend to go up in some of the poorer neighborhoods where there isn't access to things, where cars are speeding through. How do we ensure that we don't end up with this digital redlining or digital divide as we move into the 21st century?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I think first and foremost, we have to not assume that technology is going to solve this for us, because there's still human beings creating the technology. And we've had examples. The two that strike me as the most obvious ones are the interstate highway system. And the other one is just our overall fuel inputs into our transportation system that have created a lot of growth and a lot of opportunity for many people. But as you can see, there are constraints on that growth. The highway system divided many communities, tore up a lot of low-income communities of color, and our fuel inputs right now are choking us on greenhouse gases. And so we have to think much more long-term about how this technology affects us. The number one problem with technology right now is that this is the way you get to it. And last I looked, we had roughly 20 to 25% of the population that doesn't have a smartphone. And so when we think about how technology can be deployed, how it can be safely deployed in our system, we have to understand that until we're able to close the divide on some of the access points on the technologies that many of us use every day without even thinking about it, we'll still have that divide. I'm really happy that we were able, and I'll get to the second part of your first question because I think it's related, that the pilots we did at USDOT on connected vehicles were really important. And one of the reasons was, and this was by design, that we wanted to look at what kinds of improvements in safety can occur in different environments. So, New York City, Tampa, Florida, and rural Wyoming, you couldn't find three more different places to examine the real safety impacts of connected vehicles. But that's really important because we want to imagine that wherever you happen to be in this country, in a fully built out connected vehicle scenario, you can realize the benefits of that system. And so that study and the work that's being done in the pilot will be critical in helping us understand where the best advantages will come in those various places.
Yeah, I think what has been really important out of that work is, that was kind of seed money that USDOT went out and planted to see, in New York City and in Tampa, Hillsborough Expressway Authority, and then in Wyoming. And from my time in Colorado, I got to tell you that the amount of freight traffic on I-80 and the impacts when it gets shut down, massive. But I remember getting an email from somebody in Florida who said that they were even outside of the deployment area, and their connected vehicle was talking to another connected vehicle and avoided a crash. Yeah. And because of that seed money that was deployed, there is now, deployments across the country using the safety spectrum, and it's just been amazing. I did want you to, if you wanted to, you said there was the part about the experiences for you as a mayor. Yeah. And how that, making sure that those communities weren't left out as we move forward, because that is the piece that as we invest in these communities, we want to make sure that we're not leaving anybody behind.
Yeah, we have to do a lot of work to, first of all, make sure our public input systems are hearing people. A lot of times the time and the location of public input is inconvenient for people who work. And that's on the surface one of the big problems with and then the other problem is that a lot of times when we're doing projects, we're not actually listening to the public. We're doing the meeting because we have to, but we're not paying attention. So everything from that to who's on the state boards of transportation, how diverse are those boards, to who's doing the work and the projects and doing things like the local hire rule that we were able to get done before the end of the last administration that's since frankly been abandoned, but allowing people to work on projects that are near where they live. I really think the role transportation plays in addressing the underlying equity issues in our culture and society have been undervalued. And I strongly believe that in an era of technology with so much that's possible in transportation, we would be foolish as a country not to find a way to use that technology to help us close those gaps.
Yeah, you mentioned the local hiring preference, and I want to thank you personally. In Denver on the I-70 project, we actually got one of those local hiring exceptions, and we're actually hiring people out of the neighborhood, Elyria, Swansea, to work on that project, to give them a life skill, and then to go in. And again, the connected vehicle piece, just, if we can deploy all elements of technology, and this makes those neighborhoods safer. Secretary LaHood, I wanted to come to you. Secretary Foxx was talking about the investments that's needed. Obviously, we have a challenge with just funding transportation when we think about, crumbling roads and bridges that we often talk about. But, in my time traveling the world the last couple of years and seeing the countries that are deploying technology and getting it right, they're not having a should we fund roads and bridges or technology conversation. They're having a we should fund roads and bridges and technology because they view it as the 21st century infrastructure. And so, I know you struggled a lot. All of us struggle a lot with the funding aspects of this. How do you find the money to invest in things like V2X and infrastructure?
Well, you have to have people in positions where they really have a vision and a plan, and that's what we did while we were there. While Anthony and I were there, we surrounded ourselves with good people who had a vision and who had a plan. And we worked for a guy who was willing to put the money into it and was willing to stand up for rules and regulations that could implement these kinds of opportunities. And that's what it really takes. When you look around the country and you see what states are doing, the innovators are in governors' offices, the innovators are in mayors' offices, the innovators are in planners' offices, and they're waiting for that kind of vision and innovation in Washington. And because they simply don't have the resources to do the things that need to be done now to implement these kinds of visionary ideas. Yeah.
Well, we had a comment, and I'll use this to frame maybe the last question up for you, Secretary Foxx, from Imad Al-Qadi to all. Platooning is here, and platooning obviously where we have one truck being driven in the front, and then the rest of the trucks being connected to that first truck, and you're getting fuel efficiency savings. That is something that a lot of states are deploying right now. Secretary Foxx, you work at a company that is obviously very focused on innovation and things. What sort of excites you as you look out into the landscape? Whether it's connected vehicles or new technology pieces. What is exciting that's on the horizon that we can look forward to as we contemplate the 21st century infrastructure?
Yeah, I've been. Thanks for the question. I've been watching the discussion between Silicon Valley and the traditional auto industry over connected vehicles and autonomous vehicles, slight differences in the way people look at these things. But what I'm really excited about is the convergence of both. The idea that a camera can do more than a human eye can to help spot some of the safety dangers that many of us maybe slower to react to, and that the connection over a digital signal can even make that even better. And so when these technologies are brought together, I think you have the makings of a future that is far safer on the roadways than the one that we're living in today. So, I think a couple of things are really key. We've got to maintain and make use of the broadband that's been reserved for that purpose, and make sure that we work harder to accelerate the use of connections. I think that platooning is easily the easiest, first, best use case for connected vehicles, and that's why you're seeing it starting to come online. And I think over time we're going to realize benefits from road safety to relieving some of the pressure on truck drivers who are incentivized to drive for hours and hours and hours without adequate rest, and to try to make sure we're doing everything to bring the human element into an optimal position. So I just think there's so many benefits of this over time, but the convergence is really where I think we get a real punch in terms of the overall impact.
Well, you hit the nail on the head around preserving the full safety spectrum. I mean, that is something that at ITS America we've been very focused on to make sure that when we're talking with the FCC and all the other stakeholders and cable folks who are out there who want to put unlicensed devices in there, that we say, listen, let's understand the safety impact. And let's understand all of the deployments that are going on across the country, not just in the places where we saw them under your leadership, but, for all of the potential future cases. And, I do want to thank Secretary Chow and USDOT right now for being very forward-thinking in their leadership in their fight to preserve the spectrum as well. And really, that's what V2X Week is about, is making sure that we are preserving the spectrum, focusing on safety. And I know that's been a real hallmark of both of your careers. And I just want to thank you both for your leadership. So thank you so much, Secretary LaHood, for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Foxx. And thanks for willing to join us in this fight.